All right, we are back on the low-tech ultimate scale things down because technology is not our friend. This is real boxing talk.
That's
As
true.
you can see, we all have something to do with boxing in our backgrounds, as long as they're clear and working. We're going to touch on a few things today that we find interesting. One, we were really looking forward to the return of Carl Frampton, the return of the Jackal, or the Night of the Jackal, or however you want to put it. And something was brought up by that fight. Let's cover the fight first, and we'll talk about a few things after that. First of all, welcome, gentlemen. Charles, when we were looking at this fight, what did you think? Well, Frampton's name, or did we think Jamel was really going to be able to take care of business going into it?
Well, I mean, I think you knew going into it that Frampton was the name. We knew about Herring, right? But it was like we still were waiting on something from him, right? If you knew him, you were still waiting for a major fight, and this was a key for him because he's talking about moving up. He has some other aspirations, and granted, you looked at his record, and he was a little older. You're wondering, okay, when is he gonna have that spectacular moment? And I think that's what people were waiting on. I had to admit I was too, because even went back and looked at his record, and I was like, yeah, but I still need that name for you to kind of show me that you're ready for that next level. And I think this particular fight is exactly what he was looking for.
Well, John, as we mentioned in last week's show that we were able to record about 8 seconds of, the surprising thing was that Herring is the older fighter. Did that have anything to do with the outcome, you think? Or is that just, is the amount of ring time and ring rust and all that? How did that play into how the fight played out?
Boxing is so weird because, Herring's 35 and Frampton's 34, right? But it was obvious that Frampton was the older fighter in the boxing ring. Mm-hmm. Even though he's only had like 32, 33 fights, I could tell in the first round, I mean, he's not going to beat this guy. There's no way. Herring was on his game. Frampton was off. You could see it. He didn't have that. He always had that quick first step that would get him closer because he's usually the smaller guy in fights anyway. I mean, he's a little tiny guy, 5'5". So it wasn't like he was shocked by fighting a guy about 5'10", but he couldn't get inside. And then, not to take anything away from Herring, he fought a really, really good fight. I mean, he was very precise. He had a game plan. He executed it perfectly. And Frampton, other than maybe one round where he had to get super aggressive, tagged him a couple times, but it didn't have any effect. So Herring, his last fight was controversial. A lot of people said that he didn't show very much, and some people just in their most important fight either rise to the occasion or in any kind of sport, or they just collapse. And he brought his game up, and Frampton's game was even less than it was in his last two fights. And that was the thing in retrospect. Frampton was favored going in, but I think it was more what you guys said at the beginning. It was his reputation that had him as the favorite. But I wrote an article about it, and I just posted it because I was very sad to see it. I've always liked Frampton. I'll never forget his fight in Belfast where they built the Titanic, and it was insane. I mean, I wanted to go the next time he fought there. I thought, this looks like fun. And that was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. So I was sad. Anytime a fighter that I admire loses like that, gets knocked down and stops, he's embarrassed. He's crying in the ring, and I feel bad for him because boxing is ugly, and it's like anything. I remember being all upset when Willie Mays stumbled trying to catch that ball for the Mets. I mean, I felt like, that's the cruel irony of sports. You get older, you could have did it before, but now you can't, and you're embarrassed. And I think he was embarrassed a little too. He's trying to be the first Irishman to win three titles in 3 different divisions, and wasn't to be. But again, all the kudos to Herring who did it all right and did it correctly with a lot of class too.
Well, Charles, we always talk about, not always, we talk about that. When is the moment? When did, and I always use the James Worthy thing. So James Worthy, if you're ever listening, I hold you in the utmost regard. But there was one season you were James Worthy, and there was the next season you weren't anywhere close to being James Worthy. And when we last saw Frampton in a big fight, it was against Leo Santa Cruz. Mm-hmm. And we know how much we respect Leo Santa Cruz. What did Frampton do, or what didn't he do, or wasn't able to do in this fight than the last fight we saw him against Santa Cruz.
Well, I think John hit on a major point. I think a lot of it had to do with his quickness and his ability to be first, because that's what he did against Santa Cruz, particularly in the first fight. He was first. He was always the aggressor, and he was able to keep the opponent on their heels. And particularly when you're fighting a bigger fighter, if you're a smaller guy, you got to get inside. You got to mix it up, because the bigger guy can stand on the outside, throw that punch, throw that jab at you, keep you at bay, and then attack you when he needs to. So you're going to have to cut the ring off a little bit, or cut the space off, should I say. You know, you have to limit the space. And I don't think he was able to do that when you watch Frampton. And you could just tell, too, that he appeared to be a step slow. The other part, too, is when I was watching the replay and some of the highlights, his hands were down. There were certain places where there were open spaces. There's angles where he could be hit. And when you watched that fight, you saw that Herring knew, especially later in the fight, I think around the 5th round, and was tagging him, when he hit him with the left hand, and then when he hit him with the uppercut. Normally a fighter, when they have their hands up and they're closing up, they're shutting things off. But it's like the space was there open, similar to what, when you think about what Tank Davis did to Leo Santa Cruz. They saw it previously, the space previously before they threw the punch. And that lets you know they were waiting to throw that punch. They saw it before it even happened. And I think when you're not able to, and I think that was Frampton's issue. He wasn't able to kind of close up, shut the angles off like he probably would have been doing. So even if his hands were not able to block, he could move out of the way. And I think it shows that he slowed down. He slowed down as a fighter, which oftentimes when you're getting hit with punches that were not the case when you were younger, it can make you start to rethink, and what am I doing in this ring? Do I belong here anymore? Do I have the skill set to be here to compete, or is somebody gonna kill me?
Well, and it's a perfect segue to the next thing, even though I wanted to make 3 points before that. Thank you very much. Shameless plug for the Ultimate Sports Network and Real Boxing Talk. We actually covered the Frampton Santa Cruz fight, or one of the fights. And one of the things that we talked about during that was Frampton made Santa Cruz back up, which you didn't see ever. And it's like he got him to back up. In this fight, John, he wasn't able to do any of that. Is that a respect of his speed, as Charles said, waning, or is it that Herring fought a great fight?
It's both. And you know what, when Charles mentioned Santa Cruz, isn't it ironic that, because it was Tank Davis knocked him out with an uppercut, right? And here's Frampton getting stopped basically with an uppercut. Very interesting. I always going to think about Santa Cruz and Frampton because of those two great fights. Frampton got up, but you could see he was out. It was over. It was done. He wobbled. But yeah, it was both. I mean, that old saying, I'm going to be Mr. Cliche here. Fighters, they get old in the ring. Suddenly they just get old, and it happens. It happens in all of life. You just don't have what you once did. And Herring, even though, again, back to how we started, Frank, even though Herring was officially 35, he was not old in there. He was not old in there. He was sharp. He was on point. I think Frampton wanted it bad, but I think Herring is hungrier. I do, and I think there's just something to do that. But I don't care how hungry you are. I don't care what kind, because Frampton was like, I had a great training camp. Okay, but when you can't bring it into the ring like you used to, into the fight, it doesn't matter what you do, you're not going to win. And again, I don't like to take anything away from Herring because, there were some factors, like Dillian White and Povetkin. You could see Povetkin was done even before he got in the ring, but you don't want to take away from the guy because the guy still has to go in there and do it. And Herring did it. And no one's ever stopped Frampton. No one's even gotten close to stopping him. And, he fought Scott Quigg, who was, I'll never forget that fight. He was 31-0 with 28 knockouts going into that fight. It's like, holy moly. And he was bigger than Frampton. Frampton broke his jaw and beat him.
Yeah, walked right through him, right.
So you got to give it to Herring. He did it. He won it fair and square. As Frampton said, and I love this because I like class, he was the better man. And now Herring has to decide who he wants to fight next. And interestingly enough, he did not mention the guy that Shakur guy that Charles and I like so much, he did not mention him. So, but he's got lots of choices. He's probably going to move up to 135, getting that mix with all those youngins. So it's cool.
Charles, you mentioned something that I thought was very important, and I don't know if you meant to say it this way, but the way you said it was perfect. During the fight, do you think Frampton got to the point where in the middle it was like, uh-oh, this is not good? We've seen guys get beat before, and we've seen guys get beat by better fighters. We've seen all of that. But do you think he got to the point where he was like, not that he was looking for a way out, but he's like, I don't have what I had, and I'm not sure that I'm going to have it. And then that starts the downward spiral.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't want to say that because, I mean, anybody that gets in that ring comes in with a plan and they're ready for it. But if you watch closely, he took the left hand, right, which knocked him down the first time. And you're like, oh, wow. But the uppercut was like, oh, my God. Yeah, this is a problem. And at that point, he starts to spiral backwards. He's moving around. He's trying to regain his composure. But I think he started to say, wow, yeah, you're right. It was that damn moment for him. It's like, man, this dude really is on me. I really don't have anything to do with it. And in fact, I think at one point after that uppercut, he turns around and kind of looks at his corner like trying to say, I'm okay, right? But it's like, nah, bro, you stumbling. So I think the uppercut, I would say the uppercut, because you can see a flash knockdown, or you can even say with a clear punch like that left hand, you kind of say, okay, well, maybe I get my faculties back. But when another significant straight punch comes through without any defense whatsoever, which was the uppercut, yeah, I think he was like, yeah, I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble.
Yeah. John, there's for some reason, I always think of the the Clay Liston, the first fight. And the realization on Liston's face, like, not only do I not have an answer for this, I never would have had an answer for this. I never will have an answer for this. That's one thing. Or the slew of guys that got in with Mike Tyson. But it's, I don't have an answer for this, but I used to have an answer for this. Which is worse?
Well, with Liston, I think I remember reading later that, and this surprised me because he had never been this close to the then Cassius Clay. He said to a friend of his, allegedly or whatever, boy, he was a lot bigger than I thought. Right. I mean, what did he think that he's there? He is standing over him a year later behind Charles. But I think as the fight went on, especially when the then Cassius Clay couldn't see, I think that was the most demoralizing thing. He could see, but he really couldn't. For him, you can kind of see that he was figuring, this is my chance. I'm gonna knock this kid out right now, and he went for it. He was throwing haymakers, and he hit him with I think one shot, and it would have knocked out a lot of guys, but not that iron chin guy. And I think after that, he said, I can't beat this guy. If he's half blind and I can't get him, I'm never gonna get him.
Right.
So I think a part of him, I don't want to say he quit. There's always going to be controversy about that fight, about his injury and everything, blah, blah, blah. That's for another show. But I think mentally, up here, there was a part of him, we were talking about Frampton. Same thing. Frampton was like, he didn't quit, but he went, oh boy, I can't do it. I can't. And that's got to be really hard to think to yourself as an athlete, especially as a boxer. You're thinking, man, I'm going to get hurt here. That's what I'm thinking. Now, listen, I don't think thought that, but I think he thought, I can't beat this kid. He's too fast, right? Yeah. So you talk about Tyson. Tyson was just so freaking intimidating when he was young. I mean, he just look at guys and you could see them going, oh, what did I do? I chose the wrong career here. Yeah. I don't want to fight this guy, right?
Why did I take this fight?
But Liston used to do that to guys too. And when the Cassius Clay and Liston were looking at Clay, he never blinked. He just looked, and he was talking to him. So, but he said later, I remember reading it, were you scared? He goes, hell yeah, I was. He's glaring at me like that, but he's not going to let him see it.
Sure.
Right.
So it's one of those deals. But yeah, no, I think that's a good point, Frank. I think it's very demoralizing when you you think you've got somebody, or in Frampton's case, you realize you don't have it anymore. And I would imagine that, never been in that situation, that's got to be really, really difficult for a fighter.
Well, Charles, I'm going to tweak the question I asked you off air. When you see guys that maybe should have realized that, but they still keep fighting, can you think of a couple of them that just, you should have stopped 3 fights ago, you should have stopped 6 fights ago, or are you just collecting the paycheck? What's going on? What jumps in your mind? You go, yeah, he probably realized he should have retired, but he didn't. I can think of a couple.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too morbid, but it is what it is.
Sure.
Roy Jones Jr. for sure.
There's where I was going.
Jerry Corey, man. Jerry Corey, and Muhammad Ali. I would never, ever, and I would never forgive or forget. I would never forgive Larry Holmes for that fight. I thought it was despicable. For whatever reason they did it, I would never forget it. And I don't know if Mr. Ali would have been here even longer. But the factor that, I mean, granted, I know it was cash, but it was all that, and you love that man so much as he portrayed in such a manner, why wouldn't you just give him the money instead of seeing him jump in there, or find a way to do that? Because you still hurt him. You could tell he didn't belong in there, and it wasn't like he was trying to, it was almost, to me, it was almost, even though he won't say it, it's almost like Larry Holmes, it was his way too to kind of say, I'm finally putting the legend down. Because it wasn't like you just kind of hit him in the chest or whatever. He literally like put him down and put him in a position where you could saw he was helpless. So I was a little skirtish on that too. But no, those 3 guys off the top of my head really were really come off as, that's those moments that you're trying to go like, damn. And two, last but not least, probably because of the money, Leon Spinks.
Yeah, it's like but when you're looking at such a short shelf life of Leon Spinks, you're going to catch lightning in a bottle again, maybe, but obviously he wasn't ready to play. John, who just, I don't want to say held on too long, but just, it was like, you're not the same guy. Why are you still doing this? And is that maybe always, it's up to them instead of up to us?
It's apparently it's always up to them. And then you always read that people are reluctant to tell them. The guy that I always think of, and again, because he was one of my favorites, Matthew Saad Muhammad. He hung around way too long. Livingstone Bramble hung around way too long. He's losing the guys that he would have beat with one hand tied behind his back. Sugar Ray Leonard against Terry Norris. He's done. You could see it. Then he comes back and fights Macho Camacho. Muhammad Ali was really slowly, the Ernie Shavers fight, you knew that's it. He's got to call it a day because he's getting tagged. Right. But no, that was the saddest. That Larry Holmes fight that I told you, I've only seen parts of it once, and I'll never watch it again. Mm-hmm. That was I'm not about sad. That was the saddest thing. And that's, I guess, it's amazing too. There's a tie-in with Joe Louis, because Muhammad Ali used to say, I'm never going to go out like Joe Louis did.
Right.
And he did. And the reporters were crying when Joe Louis got knocked out by Rocky Marciano. And I think anybody with a heart had to feel it when you were watching. Jose Napoles was another one who was done, and he was still going. He was still fighting. It happens in boxing way, way too much. And I can't believe there isn't someone who tells them. But you're not going to tell Muhammad Ali, you shouldn't be fighting Larry Holmes. I'm going to always agree with Charles on this. Larry Holmes is, I always had kind of like this about him, talking out of both sides of his mouth. You can't say, I love this man, he did all this for me, and then beat the crap out of him a few years later. You can't have it both ways, Larry. Right. That's the way I see it. It would have been incredible if he had stepped aside. Nobody ever would have done it, but it would have been the right thing. And I wish he had, because that last beating that Muhammad Ali took, that was unnecessary. That was bad. Yeah, it was terrible. And and Jerry Quarry was another sad one to watch, where you're like, oh God, you don't need this, man. You don't need it.
Yeah.
Well, mine was, and we mentioned Leon Spinks, mine was Michael Spinks versus Mike Tyson. And not to say that, Michael Spinks couldn't have beat other heavyweights at that point, but it was so, obvious isn't the right word. he didn't want to get in the ring for that fight. The knees were bad, the whole 9 yards, and we've covered Michael Spink's career, the light heavyweight part of it. It's like, well, I think he just got backed into it. You have to take this fight. You have to get paid unless you retire now, and you're going to look like a sissy if you retire now. You've got to get in the ring with this guy. Someone's got to slow him down. It's up to you, Michael. And Michael's like, well, why would I think I could stop? Okay, all right. And was it 91 seconds later, 81 seconds later? You know what? He didn't really catch me with a good one, but he caught me with one that was good enough. I don't want to play anymore. I'm taking my marbles and going home. So, and he still has his marbles, which is an important thing. But yeah, it's, you get guys that are kind of, and Roy Jones Jr. to me was a perfect example. Roy Jones Jr. should be remembered as being a super being, an otherworldly type of fighter. And you shouldn't have those last almost 10 fights, if not more than that, to look at and go, well, I don't see why you thought he was so special, because he was special up until then. Not to say he shouldn't have fought Calzaghe. I think that was one that he had to take. Oh my heavens. So yeah, I agree with you, Charles. It just, sometimes you go too far. John?
Frank, I was just going to say, Sugar Ray Robinson is another one. Sugar Ray Robinson fought until he was 45 years old. He was getting beat. He got beat by Danny Moyer. Danny Moyer wouldn't have laid a glove on him before that. He could still beat some guys, but it was another sad one. 1965, he retires.
Yeah.
It's just
way too long.
Gosh. Yeah, it's just, it's sad. It's just not barely anybody is Bernard Hopkins. I mean, you just can't keep going like you're going, and it catches up with you eventually. And it catches up with you against the guy that had no business even being in the ring with you. That's the part that bothers me about it.
The interesting thing about athletics, and Charles, you and I have talked about this around this, but we've kind of talked about it. The interesting thing about athletics, two things. One, you're getting paid to perform. You're not in the most. Now we've got some of these contracts that people are signing in major sports that they're getting paid because of what they've done before and not what they're doing in performance. But in boxing, you're getting paid to perform. If you don't perform in this fight, with a few exceptions, you're not going to get the next fight. And if you don't perform in that fight, you're not going to get the next fight. And unless you are solid with your business arrangement, and this I also think was part of Michael Spink's trying to get some money or something for Butch Lewis, another story entirely, that you have to keep performing. You say Sugar Ray Robinson, you got to stay out there or you're not getting paid. So, some of it is the case of guys stick around too long because they need to get paid. And another one I think is because it's how do you go away from being that guy? How do you just turn it off? How do you say, I was that guy. I was the John L. Sullivan. I can look any man in the house, any place, and to not be able to be that guy again. How difficult do you think is that for some of these people that we're talking about? You fought that fight or too many.
What was that for, bro?
I'm sorry.
Yeah. For me? Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's very difficult because, I mean, we all been athletes, right? In our own realm, and it's like jumping. You like, damn! I remember I could pin somebody's shot on the backboard, right? Or I could touch the rim, and I could do so many things just effortlessly. And then now, as you get older, you realize it might be in the boxing where you're training and you're running, and you could run real fast, and you could run a couple miles once you got in shape, and it didn't bother you, or your breathing was different, or just even in shadow boxing, or they get into a ring with, you're sparring with a guy they used to beat the hell out of, and now that guy's like hitting you with bombs or hitting you with shots that you normally wouldn't receive, and you're trying to make excuses. So I think it's very difficult, particularly as you mentioned so eloquently, from the standpoint of you're getting paid, you're a top-notch world-class athlete, right? You're getting all of the notoriety, people telling you you're great, and you were and the new, and from that to the undisputed, and
right,
so many great things. You know how great you were, And now to try to come to realization that you're a step slower, you're down another level. I mean, how the hell are you gonna tell Ali that he wasn't the greatest and still wasn't the greatest than most guys when he got older? That's hard to accept because for so long you've been the guy. And I'm sure it's very humbling, had to be devastating and demoralizing to a lot of guys too. Particularly, and I'll get out this real quick, for the guys, that's all they know. If all you know is boxing has been your life, you've been brought up that certain way, that's how you provide it for so many people and yourself. And what else do you have? When they don't have anything else, it's like, I'd rather die because that's all I have.
Yeah, and Frank, real quick, they're young. This is the thing I always talk about. They might be old like Frampton. He's only 34 years old, and he can't do what he loves anymore, Charles. I mean, think about that. If you love what you do, you're 34, you still feel good, but you can't do what you need to do in a boxing ring, one, because it's too dangerous, but you never do it again. That's the thing I don't think a lot of people understand, is because most of us work, some of us, if we're lucky, work at a job we kind of like until we're like 60. Think about a job that you love, it's your passion. Like you said, Charles, you've been doing it all your life since you're like 7, and suddenly you're 31, 32, 33, and it's like, nope, you can't do it anymore. Some can walk away, like Rocky Marciano did, Marvin Hagler did. Most people, that's their whole identity. That's their whole life. How do you do it? And if you were older, I think it would be easier. If you were like, Bernard Hopkins, I would think he has no regrets. I mean, he hung around till he was 51, right? So, but most of them aren't that fortunate. And the reality that we were saying, that's it. You're not doing this anymore. No more training, no more fights, no more hearing people chanting your name. Sugar Ray Leonard said that was the hardest thing. It's like a drug. You don't have that anymore. Where do you find anything like that? You can't. So it's always tough. It's complicated. It's not. So people, oh well, why do you stay away? You know what? It's not that simple. It's not that simple, man.
Well, and it's funny because this is the sport where you see the guys that retire and then unretire, then retire and unretire and retire and unretire, and that has something to do with it, I'm sure. And I also think there's something about it too. When you get to being on this side of the microphone and you're watching or scouting or however you want to look at it, and you say, I see the holes. I see how I can beat this guy. I know what I can do. Yes, 5 years ago guy can do it, but you don't see yourself as 5 years ago guy. You see yourself as in present day. And you're like, well, why can't they stop him? It's pretty easy. That left isn't going to land on me. Like you said, Charles, that uppercut hit Frampton's like, it's like he didn't think it could happen. Where did this come from? Boom, done. Huh? How'd I get hit with that? I shouldn't have got hit with that.
Yeah,
what are you talking about?
He was shocked.
Yeah. It's like, I'm slower than I used to be. And as that realization kicks in the middle of the fight, that's got to be the worst feeling ever. It's like, I know what he's going to do. I know what I should do to stop it, and I can't combat either one of them. It's almost like you're fighting two different people.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think part of it, that's where it comes down to, because you see your prime, right? The person that they are in their prime.
In your head, right?
In your head, right? But as you get out there and you go like, well, okay, well, this is what I normally do, and what you normally do doesn't work. Or as you say, a guy catches the boxer with a shot, and they're standing there going like, dude, in a dazed type of situation. And then they're like, and then even when the corner comes back and like, you're all right, come on, guy, you're good. And they're trying to pump you up, but deep down inside, you're like, no, the hell, I'm not good. But you can't say that, because normally you want to keep your ego, you want to keep your toughness going. And unless there's a really desperate situation, you don't hear the fight say, I'm done. You don't hear a fighter say that. There's dire straits or something to that effect. But that's an evil demon or evil contrast to fight between your prime and now the you're the current day or modern day person athlete that's like, if I just do this, I stay away from him, I still might have a chance to get a decision. When in the past you're like, I'm about to knock this dude out in 5 because I see the holes in his game and I'm going to finish him. To now just coming up with a strategy to just make it to the end.
Well, John, we usually talk about basketball in the middle of boxing, but it reminds me of the idea of when you are done, the team that you are on will tell you you're done, and then maybe someone else will take a flyer on you. You can't go to another team when you're a boxer. That's it. And I'm thinking of, Joe Namath playing with the Rams, or Dominique Wilkins playing with the Celtics, or Moses Malone playing with the Bullets. Or we're like, how the hell did he get? You're like, and you're watching it going, something about this picture doesn't make sense. But when you're a boxer, you're still on the same team. You may have a different trainer, you may have different management. They may have said, don't do this anymore. Still the same team, and then too that I shouldn't be doing this anymore. So I just wonder, there's not really a question that it's just kind of that idea of when you're done. We'll use Andre Ward for an example. Andre Ward was done. Now there's still rumors that he might not be done, but Andre Ward has stayed done, and he stayed done at the top of his game. How does he do it? Or is it, I'm at this level, I don't want to be below that level?
Well, spending the time I did with Andre Ward, he was talking about that when he was 25. He was saying, I don't want to fight into my 30s. I don't want to do what Roy Jones did, who he greatly admired.
Right.
Andre Ward is just one of those guys, kind of like Rocky Marciano, in the sense that he said, look, when I reach the end, that's it. And I think injuries played a part. He had a bad knee, had a bad arm, he was breaking a finger. He just had all kinds of things, but he was content. And he also, this is Andre Ward. A lot of people don't know that this broadcasting career that he has, that he's so good at, he was actually interning for that while he was on top. So he was planning, he was one of those people. Most of them, like Charles said, they don't have a plan B. This is it. And you need a friend to tell you, look, this can't go on forever. You got to think of something that you could do after, and they can't comprehend what they can do. And then it takes great personal strength. Andre Ward is, he's chomping at the bit. He wants to fight Canelo. He's like, I'm 37. I don't care.
Right.
I can beat that guy. I could have beat him 5 years ago. I could beat him still. And he probably could, to be honest. If anybody could, I would never bet against Andre Ward, ever. If he decides that he wants to do it, that's it. But I hope that he stays. I mean, he's so competitive, as I've said a million times. I think I'm competitive. We're all competitive. He combine us all three. That's how competitive he is. I mean, he's one of the most competitive people I've ever talked to. So he's special in that respect, that he could do it. Will he keep? I think he will, actually. And Timothy Bradley, to a certain extent too, his partner, he retired at a pretty young age, and he fought Pacquiao twice and beat one Manuel Marquez. Big achievement right there, your guy. So I think he's content too, but his wife, I think, pretty much said that's it. Just like Frampton's wife said,
yeah,
you're done, and you know it, and you got kids, and can't just think about yourself. You got to think about other things, and that helps. But when you're Andre Ward too, when you're in other instances, it can be a little more complicated. But yeah, no, Andre Ward knew, he was, as I said, he knew what he was doing. He was plotting it all out in his 20s. So what he did didn't surprise me a bit.
Well, as we're moving forward, and unfortunately we'll be moving forward with Carl Frampton, but as we're moving forward, let's take a look at what we have on the plate in the next week or so. One thing that intrigues me, Charles, is as we mentioned, the retiring person for Bernard Hopkins is Joe Smith Jr. And we're finally going to get the Maxim Vlasov fight. for the, I believe it's the WBO light heavyweight title. As we've kind of walked around the light heavyweights and the cruiserweights and whatnot, how important is this fight in the pantheon of boxing right now?
I'm not sure how important it is. I think it's an opportunity for Joe Smith, right, Jr. And I think it's an opportunity for him to kind of gain momentum, because if you notice, we know that he's done some things as far as fighting some guys and updating his record, but it kind of comes back to what we said before, about the previous fight with Frampton losing, and the opportunity for his opponent to rise up, stake your claim, show people that you're ready. And now you get your name out there even more. So it's more of an opportunity. Are we going to now say Joe Smith Jr. wins this fight and now he's the guy on top? No, we're not going to say that. We're going to say, okay, now he deserves another chance. He deserves an opportunity against a marquee guy. So I think that's what that is more than anything. You're not going to just go out and say, yeah, now is he ready to move up to heavyweight now or something to that effect? Because think about it this way, just real quick. In the weight division that he's fighting, when have we really heard his name in the upper echelon of the other guys? And some of those guys now are older in that division, right? Some of them are older. And if you can't get your name out there now, when some of the guys are like almost ancient, when in the hell are you going to ever get it out there? You're going to have to beat somebody of significance. And I think that's what it comes down to.
Well, that was kind of where I was looking at, John. If he gets this fight, who are we pairing him with next?
Well, first of all, if he gets this fight, and I love these stories, you guys know me, this is his dream to be a champion. And if he wins it, he's a champ. Mm-hmm. He's talking about fighting that tough guy, Beterbiev, who's a tank, but he'll fight him. That's the thing about Joe Smith. He's not going to beat you with his talent. If he's going to beat you, he's going to beat you with his determination.
Right.
And he's gutsy as all hell. I mean, he's only lost 3 fights. He's lost to Bivell and then Sullivan Barrera, and then an earlier fight in his career, which was probably just an anomaly. But, he's 26-3, and he can really crack. He's really a hard hitter. But this is no gimme against this Russian. I mean, this guy can box, and Joe can be outboxed. So it's a toughie. But if he wins, he's got Beterbiev. He's got a possible rematch with Dmitry Bivol, who is damn good. Bivol's talking about fighting Beterbiev. So you got it's kind of similar, and I'm sure I'm forgetting a few guys, but it's kind of similar in the heavyweights in a sense that the top guys are just like 3, 4, 5 guys in the light heavyweight division. But they all want to fight each other, and unfortunately, unlike the welterweights with two guys that we know of, that will happen. I think Beterbiev is 35. He knows that his time is short, and yeah, I'm very interested in this fight, and again, I love to see a guy live his dream, and that's Smith's got his big shot here this Saturday.
Well, Charles, as we've talked about in the other divisions where we're stacked, we've got 8, 10 guys that everyone thinks can, maybe beat somebody, and they're relevant in the talk of boxing. What has to happen if you see Beterbiev fight, he can fight. Mm-hmm. What has to happen in the light heavyweights for us to jump back into, hey, these guys aren't bad? I know when we talk about the cruiserweights, maybe it's because of the name. It just doesn't sound like it's, and the Bridger weight's going to be the same thing. But there used to be some light heavyweights that could actually box back in the day. What gets us to this is the division we have to pay attention to? Is it just a couple of guys, or is it we're not paying attention to this division at all for a reason?
No, I don't think it's just a couple of guys. I think what it is you had to start to come up with some spectacular or some very impressive performances. That's what it is. I mean, really. So you can just say it's a bunch of guys fighting and boxing. Okay, well, when is somebody going to separate themselves from the pack, right? And you kind of watch that guy. Let's be real. When we came in, we said Frampton was the guy. He has the pedigree. He has he had the name. And Herring said, you know what? The hell with that. And now it's like, okay, well, now Herring, you're in the mix. Yeah, let's put him in there, as John said, with the younger guys. But you have to start having these performances that catch people's attention, because people still love the pure art and science of boxing. So you can win a unanimous decision, you can kind of get by, but nobody's gonna run to the rescue and go, man, we got to start talking about this, particularly when it's a division that has lost its luster, if you will, lately. So to answer your question, we need to have more exciting performances and more spectacular performances, so people go, hey, that guy can fight. And what if he was big enough to move up to the heavyweight, right? I mean, those are the things that people start to say, those questions or those things that people ponder because of someone's performance.
And so we're looking at a light heavyweight division that is it bereft of that, or is it just we don't see it?
Well, Kovalev dominated it for the longest time, right? I mean, he looked like he was a monster who couldn't be beaten. And then, that guy we were just talking about came along and knocked him off his perch. And he's still around, but he's obviously not what he once was.
Right.
But you got Jesse Hart, son of Cyclone Hart, who I remember so well from Philly, another Philly tough guy. Jan Pascal is still around. He's damn good. He's older, but he's still damn good. Bado Jack is there, former champion, tough as nails. See, these are the guys I said I think I'm forgetting about somebody, but I know Alvarez, leader Alvarez, who knocked out Kovalev's there, but Joe Smith knocked him out. Mm-hmm. So there is a little bit more depth there, but it's still about those top guys. I don't think any of them, maybe Beterbiev might move up to heavyweight or move up to that, whatever that's going to be, cruiserweight or that other thing, that other heavyweight plan B thing they're talking about. Happily, they haven't done anything with that yet. But there's still some good fights out there. And John Pascal will fight any of those guys. That guy has no fear. And he'll fight them hard. And he'll beat a lot of them still, even though he's older. So the division is still interesting. It's funny, the light heavyweight's always considered the forgotten about division when I was younger. Even though we had Bob Foster knocking out everybody, we had Vincente Rondon, who was real dominant until he fought Bob Foster, who knocked him out in 2 rounds. I'll never forget that. But it was all about Bob Foster, and before that, it was about Dick Tiger. So you had talented fighters. It was just they were the heavyweights was the glamorous division, and the light heavyweights was the B side in a sense. And it's kind of still like that. I think a lot of people, I bet you if you asked even a casual fan, name me a light heavyweight, they'd probably say Kovalev, but they couldn't name anybody else.
Right.
And that's unfortunate, but I like what I see. I think there are some good fights out there. And if Smith wins, then he sets himself up perfectly for one of those guys. And no matter what happens, he's going to put it all on the line.
Well, Charles, it's something that John just said that made me think. When we see the guys or saw the guys coming out of the Olympics that we were all excited about and won a gold medal or fought in a gold medal round or whatever, and they were light heavyweights, the instant thought was, I bet he could be heavyweight champ of the world. Mm-hmm. It was like, you didn't see a guy that was fighting lightweight going, he could be, it was like, he can be a lightweight champion of the world, or whatever. But the light heavyweights, we automatically assume that, or maybe I'm just, correct me if I'm wrong, we assume that they're going to be, their aspiration is to become a heavyweight.
Yeah, well, you think that was just the natural, matriculation as far as moving up, right? You just kind of go, this guy's like 175, so you do the math, 175, there's easy as he gets older, he can be at 190, 195. Even if he hits that 200 mark, he's heavyweight material back in the day, right? Now with all these politically correct challenges and all these weights they're trying to get to, it throws a wrench in it because you don't want to get anybody hurt. But I mean, you just knew a guy's like, hey, I can fight him. I'm gonna move up. I might have to do it from a calculated standpoint, but I'm gonna move up. Plus, too, let's be real. When you look at that, and no disrespect, I know I agree with John 100% about talent being in the light heavyweight division. But the one thing to me that may hurt it, the division along, and John said it earlier, along with these modern day fans, is how in the hell does Canelo go from 160 up to fight one of the so-called top guys? And even though he's coming down, spiraling down in his career, beats him convincingly, and then it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna just kind of play with it. So I'm gonna go between 160, 175, and 168, 175. It's like, well, isn't there somebody up there that can sit his little butt down and tell him you don't belong here? That to me says, damn, how weak is this division? I mean, I know that's harsh, and I'm not taking from nobody, but you gonna let a little dude come up there? I mean, think about it.
Right.
When Roy Jones Jr. went to heavyweight, he clearly selected his opponent. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he's not alone. There's some other guys that did the same thing. I'm gonna go up here. He didn't just go like, you know what? I want this dude over here. I want the best guy. I want to fight this guy. It was selectively done. Canelo was like, psh, he's supposed to be the guy. He fought Andre Ward. He looked a little old to me. I'm gonna go up there and get his belt. I'm like, huh? You're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to run up there. Yeah, you know.
And this is the thing about boxing that I think we have a problem with. Okay, I'm going to fight Ruiz. Okay, James Toney, you want to fight heavyweight? Sure. You want to fight anybody? No, I want to fight that guy. You know, you pick and choose who you want, and you know, styles make fights, but also you know if you've got a chance to win the fight. You know, if you want to go move to a different weight class, they should decide who you fight, not you should decide who you fight. And John, you know, something that I think I think it's the WBC or the WBO has a Bridgerweight champion. So it does actually exist, as weird as it sounds. So yeah, I don't know. One last thing before we go, we've got another fight coming up with Vlasov Ennis and Sergey Lipinets. I always forget the little I in there. For the welterweights. Now, we already have a slew of welterweights we're talking about. Can one of the winner of this fight, can they muscle in, John? Can they muscle into this mix of welterweights, or the loser for that matter?
Well, Boots Ennis is really interesting to me because, I mean, he's 26-0 with 24 knockouts. Mm-hmm. He had 16 knockouts in a row. You talk about flying under the radar. Yeah. I just think, I don't know. I've seen a few of this guy's fights, and what I've seen, I mean, he comes from a fighting family. You know, his dad was a fighter. His two brothers were fighters. Not that that always means anything, but this guy might be special. I'm just going to say that right now. I mean, as much as the guys lighter than him get a lot of the talk, this guy is a natural, you know, and so anytime he fights, I want to see it because he's got it. And a few people that I really respect, trainers and everything, say the same thing about it. So Lipinets is a tough guy. You know, his only loss was to Mikey Garcia. He got knocked down, but he gave Mikey a pretty tough fight when Mikey was, I would consider him more in his prime then. So this is a step up fight for Ennis. So we have to see if he can handle Lipinets, and Lipinets has got Joe Goose in his corner, one of the best trainers. So he's real aggressive. So he's going to be bringing it. So Ennis Boots has got to be on those boots and moving around and doing his thing. So it ought to be a fun fight. And it could be a revealing fight. You know, anything can happen in boxing, but this is when you're young like him. He's only 23. This is a showcase fight in a sense, but this isn't a gimme fight. This is a fight where you better be on your game, or this guy Lipinets is going to knock you out or beat you or whatever. So we might learn more about Boots. That's why I'm excited about it.
Well, Charles, we've seen a couple Lipinets fights, and he's no joke. Right. So this isn't just going to be easy for anybody, but he's also not that top tier. So does this, for Ennis, does this prove that he belongs, or is this just, well, you beat one of the middle tier guys, or is it how the performance plays out?
Well, I think it's how the performance plays out. I think it's a great opportunity for Boots Ennis, though, because if you want to go to that next level, you may not get to the next shot at the 147 champion, right? You know, Errol Spence is not going to be like, oh, yeah, you really impressed me. Come on. If you want to do that for Terrence Crawford, why in the hell would I do that for you? But to your point, it does create an opportunity for him to move up to another level. So there's a few guys at 147 that's been hanging around, some of the older guys that you maybe can go after and show them that you're capable at this point. But, you know, like you said, Lipinets is not a joke. Like you said, he lost to Mikey, but he also beat a game Lamont Peterson. I mean, Lamont Peterson, you fight Lamont Peterson tonight, he will fight you right now in the street, and he's going to give it to you. You're not careful.
In his suit. In his suit.
Yeah.
And he'll be in shape too. Right.
Yeah, and it'll be a hell of a fight. So, you know, with Boots, is an opportunity for that to prove that, hey, I belong in this league. And you can talk a lot, and no disrespect to his 24 knockouts, but you know, I think that's why Bud Crawford's catching hell. What you gonna do at this level? And I love Bud Crawford, but what you do at 140 is different than what you do at 147. And I think Boots Ennis right now got an opportunity, show it. And to me, that's the other part. And I know I'm preaching to the choir. Some people like it, some people don't. But if you keep saying you are the guy, get in there with somebody then. Fight some damn body that matters. Quit saying what he won't fight me. If you really want to be the man and go after the thing, the real fighters, that's why you see Shakur Stevenson. He's young and he's talking a lot of stuff, but he like, I'll fight right now. He's like, think about it this way.
He does, yeah.
You remember the championship fight? I can't remember the guys' names, but there was a championship fight, and one of the guys pulled out. And Shakur Stevens was like, you know what?
I'll fight him.
Yeah. Let me fight him. I'm like, that's the guy I'm looking for. And I think that's where Boots Ennis has an opportunity for that. So, or you just got to do it, man, because that's how you get the recognition. Even if you lose, I know we talk about one fight where, you know, thinking put you back and people say, oh, you can't afford to lose once. Hell, Canelo did it. He took on the man. He went after TE. And now everybody's talking about how great he is. He learned so much. He's the greatest thing. It's like, so take a chance. Now Canelo's the smartest guy in the world. Canelo learned from promotion. Canelo got his own thing. He is the man now. So why not take a chance, Boots, after you supposedly win this fight? Jump in there with somebody. And even if it's not one or two, even if it's not Pacquiao, jump in there. There's enough quality options at 147 for you to show us if those 24 knockouts are the real deal. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and Frank, Frank, I was going to say real quick before I forget, Virgil Ortiz did that. You know, he said, I'll fight Terrence Crawford. He says, even if I lose, I'll fight him. So there's another guy that said it. Boots doesn't say barely anything. He's a very quiet guy. So I would imagine he wants, they're bringing him along very slow, you know, so it's a kind of a different mentality with him. He's a little mysterious there too. But yeah, real fast, Virgil Ortiz, I thought he's thinking like Canelo, hey, look, I've only had 17 fights. If I fight Terrence Crawford and lose, I'm going to sure learn a lot that I'm not going to learn fighting these other guys. So that's a different kind of these guys nowadays a lot of them don't have that mentality, but he certainly does.
Charles?
No, I think that's right on point. I mean, that's what you got to do. I mean, you look at it from that standpoint. I mean, even back to Cassius Clay, right? When you think about fighting Sonny Liston, I mean, that's something where people say you're going to get killed. Even when Ali got older and he lost and then he came back and fought George Foreman and he solved the mystery. Then, I mean, sometimes you got to take a chance. You got to take a chance. You got to believe in yourself. And even if you lose, the thing is, what do you learn from it? But your name's out there is going to create that. Or the way that we're going now, if you stay around too long and you sit on the sideline, you can get passed by. So opportunity is everything. And I just say this real quick. As much as we love Terrence Crawford, his ass is getting old, man. Right before our eyes, him and Triple G. What now?
He is old.
But I mean, the clock is ticking. It's moving. We're in the 2021. It's gonna be 2022, and you haven't announced any fights yet. And dude, You mess around and you be like, shit, I'm 40.
Well,
Let's get close.
but a perfect part of that of what we were talking about earlier, if you don't know if you have it until you get in the ring to find out.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not fighting anyone, you don't know, and you're getting older, you go, well, I'll take on this guy. Well, I got older and I'm too old to fight him anymore. You don't know that until you get into the ring, or you don't know if you have the goods until you challenge somebody. And the unfortunate part about it now is if you get that L, you're looked at as like you're damaged goods. Well, maybe that's a life lesson. Maybe that's a lesson where you learn from. I'm looking at someone, let's throw Mikey Garcia at it. Mikey Garcia had to lose to go, you know what? Or Leo Santa Cruz. I went too high. I went up too much. I should drop down to where I'm comfortable. But now I know.
Right.
I can still go down to my proper weight class and be dominant for a while. You know, Lomo found out something he hadn't found out before. Will he be able to parlay that into being dominant again, or at least being able to get a belt back? We'll find out. But at least now he knows. And that's the problem I think that we have with some of these guys is that either they think they know or they don't want to know the problems. Well, as long as everyone thinks that I'm solid, we're good. No, I want to know whether you actually have holes or not. How else are you going to learn? You know, it's like trying to put this show on and going, oh, it didn't record this week. Well, I better figure out what the hell that did. So speaking of which, we're up against the clock. So thank you, gentlemen. Yeah, I think as far as I can tell, we pushed all the right buttons. So everything should be pretty cool. Final thoughts from you. I usually don't normally do this, John, but what are you thinking about the upcoming weeks and other shows we can do?
Well, another guy we talk about a lot, Demetrius Andrade, is fighting the following weekend, April 17th. So I would like to talk a little bit about him. He's also mysterious in the sense that he doesn't really seem to get the fight that we think he deserves or wants. I don't know what it is with him. Does he really want it? He talks about fighting Charlo. Nothing ever happens. Why doesn't it happen? I don't know. And then coming soon, we're going to be talking about that guy Canelo and Billy Joe Saunders in Texas. So that ought to be fun. But I'm just thinking it a week at a time. And yeah, next week, after this weekend is Andrade. And I think we could talk about him, maybe study him and try to figure it out. He's an enigma. He's an enigma wrapped in a riddle as far as I'm concerned, because when I've seen him fight, he looks damn good to me. And back to what Charles said, maybe in a way, this is a roundabout way of saying it, but maybe there's a reason he can't get the fights too, because maybe some guys don't really want to fight him. Maybe they see the same thing, like, man, this guy, and they don't want to. The thing is, this is a good tie-in, Frank. Don't want to risk it. Don't want to risk losing, because these guys nowadays don't want to. They don't want to gamble that way. They want that O. And that's never how boxing was. I mean, even like we said, even the great Joe Louis. I mean, he lost 3 times. Muhammad Ali lost 5 times. I mean, it's not the end of the world if you lose. Back to Terrence real fast. I'm with you, Charles. I don't get it. I don't know what's going on there. I think he's waiting for Manny Pacquiao, the big one in Dubai. I'm hearing about that, and I hope he gets it. But it's disappointing. It is, and he is getting old. Triple G, let me get real fast. I think there's a plan here. You guys are gonna love this. You know, he used to fight all the time, right? I think this is because of his age. I think he had a pretty easy fight his last fight. He looked pretty good. But I think Jonathan Banks, very good trainer, said, look, we're not going to be going in every 2 or 3 months like you used to. We're going to take a nice break, let your body rest, and we'll figure something out. Now, they better get going, get something. But, 39 years old, you get a little creaky at 39. So I think that's a plan. But yeah, he's still there. He still can fight some of the top guys. But, there's some intriguing things coming up here in 2021.
Okay, Charles, take us home.
No doubt. Like you said, we're looking at some good things happening. I know this real quick. There are 2 guys that's calling this guy out. Triple G, Andre, and Charlo are calling him out. They're like, where is he at? And you before 2 years ago, you would not have seen that because nobody wanted that smoke because they were afraid of what Triple G. Somebody is calling him out. And whatever, as he mentioned, Jonathan Banks, whatever you're doing for him, getting the right masseuse, you got to pick your poison. These guys are calling him out. And I know you're talking about Canelo, but Canelo may not come back around. So we got to choose that. So with all that being said, I think one of the other things I think we should do is at some point take a fighter like John said, and then maybe say what are his best potential fights and break that down so we can kind of say, okay, Triple G, you have this plethora of opponents that really want to fight you or somebody to that effect and match them up, and maybe somebody will listen to us. And I noticed I think Tony Harrison is listening to us because I watched him on the show the other day, a good buddy show. And he said, you know what they should do? They should have a tournament. He said, I was like, yeah, baby. He said, I'd be the first one to sign up for the tournament. I signed right on the dotted line. So maybe we might know a little bit about something that can get people more involved in boxing and get them away from UFC a little bit. But, you know, hey, we're novices. What do we know? We only got no damn sponsors yet, allegedly. Anyway, so I'm just saying.
Well, on that note, I don't have anything else to add. So
perfect.
Okay.